exciting. Just you sharing all the different people from all over the world that are able to access this. I think it's wonderful. So that's really exciting as well.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Shamash. So now, hopefully, we are live on Facebook and we are recording this webinar as well. So welcome to everyone that is joining us, especially on Zoom and also on Facebook Live, or if you're watching this again from the recording. It's really nice to have so many people joining us. So this is the Happier Self, Happier World free webinar with Shamash Alidina. Thanks so much, Shamash, for just telling a little bit about yourself. We're going to dive in a bit more deeply into Shamash's background and some of the questions that you guys had, and a kind of more interactive Q&A. But to start with, I thought I'd just invite Shamash to just lead a very short 1-minute meditation just to kind of ground us and help us arrive in this experience this evening.
Sure. And maybe you can start us off. I know you've got this lovely bell that you received for your birthday.
I do. I was just telling Shamash before we started the call that I'm very excited about my birthday gift of a new meditation bell. So I asked if we could use it to begin the meditation.
Sure, yes.
So I will do that.
Thank you. So after using all this technology and managing to get either online or in person, just take a few moments to arrive in your own body and in your own mind. So you may want to close your eyes if that works for you, or have your eyes gently open. And just check in with your body. And I quite like to just roll my shoulders around a little bit and just ease off any tension. You can even massage yourself if you like. Because this webinar is all about self-care as well as creating a happier world with ourselves. So just giving yourself permission to really look after yourself, check in with your own body. I know my back's hurting a little bit, so stretch it. So just check in for yourself, what feels right for you. You may want to loosen any tight clothing. You're probably at home. If you're in the office, you might not want to do that, but if you're at home, just easing in and making yourself nice and comfortable and cozy for this webinar, and treating it like a treat for yourself. The other thing that I find quite relaxing is to take some deep breaths, and if you haven't tried that before, then you can try that today. So nice deep breath in, holding it for a few moments, and a nice slow smooth breath out. And especially on your out breath, really noticing any sense of relaxation that may take place. Deep breath in. And slow, smooth breath out with a little smile, perhaps. Good. Thank you. So thank you for being here with us, whether you're on the recording or you're live. And I'm going to pass it back on to Flo to get us started.
Thanks so much, Shamash. I hope that you are all feeling a bit more calm and arrived in this experience. I definitely am. So to introduce this webinar, I'm just going to say a little bit, very briefly, about the Network of Wellbeing and the idea behind these webinars, and then we'll start kick into the questions for Shamash. So just very briefly, the Network of Wellbeing is a UK-based network, and we really look at how we can build wellbeing together in our own lives, in connection with each other in community, and also in harmony with the natural world. Actually, last year we ran a kind of weekend-long event called Building Wellbeing Together, which some of you might have come along to. Actually, it would be really nice if you were at the Building Wellbeing Together to just mention that in the chat box. So after that, we thought it would be really lovely to extend this idea of building wellbeing together, finding out about what other happiness and wellbeing related projects are doing, extend that invitation online, and build up that network in between physical meetings and for people that are perhaps based outside of the UK as well, which is amazing that some of you are joining today from Canada, Australia, etc. So that was the idea. That's the Network of Wellbeing. That was the idea behind the webinars. Shamash is a really good friend of mine, actually, and also an amazing person all around, I think. And so he kindly agreed to support and be kind of a trial for our first webinar, and to share ideas on really kind of taking care of ourselves and having compassion for ourselves. Especially a lot of people in our audience are really working actively for community projects or different types of initiatives, really trying to help improve well-being in their own communities, or in their families, or in the context they're working in. And that's really such an amazing thing. And sometimes it can be difficult not to get lost and really intensely working hard towards an aim and forget about your own personal well-being as well. So Shamash and I talked about, let's share some ideas around how we can have a good balance between a kind of sense of happiness in ourselves and creating a sense of happiness in the wider world. So that's what our discussion is going to be about today. And yeah, if you've got any kind of comments as we go along, then feel free to just pop them in the chat box. But if you have specific questions that you'd like Shamash to address, then please put them in the Q&A box and we'll get to them at the end. But to start off with, Shamash, I just wanted to ask you quite a broad general question about what inspires you to do the work that you do. So I can give a very brief introduction to say that Shamash had co-founded an organisation called the Museum of Happiness, and he's also a mindfulness teacher. So he's very involved in this kind of well-being and happiness world. So it would be great to hear just a little bit about what inspired you to get started working on these types of topics.
Sure, yeah. I think it might be nice to hear a bit of the story about how the Museum of Happiness started, and that kind of links to my inspiration. So I'm very passionate about mindfulness and meditation. I've been practicing it for quite a few years, 20 years now. And actually 3 or 4 years ago, I've been training teachers actually through these webinars and spending a bit more time online, not having so much physical contact in the way I teach people. And I went to this charity event, and I was going for a bit of food, and I was having some vegetables for a change. I was going for the carrot, and somebody else was going for the carrot at the same time. And this girl called Vicky Johnson, she had heard a little bit about mindfulness, and she was curious about how she could practice it more. And I happened to be just about to teach a retreat, and she was so enthusiastic. I could just see it in her eyes and in her body language. She really, really wanted to participate and get engaged and involved in this retreat. So we got her involved, and she came along to this retreat for a few days. She absolutely loved the mindfulness, and we became good friends. And we started thinking, how can we actually share the ideas of mindfulness, but also wider the sense of well-being or happiness to more people, to reach more people? Because I think mindfulness, at least in London or in the UK, is quite a popular concept. But still, if you ask the average person, they haven't really heard of it and don't know what it means. So we started reflecting on that. And I was volunteering for an event. And the person who was kind of, it was in Germany, and the person who was translating for me, I was at a Dalai Lama event actually, and she was translating for me, and I asked her, what do you do? And one of the things she does is laughter yoga. I noticed from the chats, a few of you teach laughter yoga. I'm like, oh yes, I've done a little bit of that, I enjoy that. But also, she was running the Nonsium, the Museum of Nonsense. I thought, wow, it's amazing that you can have a museum for nonsense, something quite crazy. And that started getting me thinking that maybe the museum concept could be a good way of spreading the concept of something like mindfulness. But I wanted to make it a bit wider. So I was thinking about well-being, and I was thinking Museum of Laughter at the beginning as well. And then me and Vicky together, we came up with this idea of a Museum of Happiness as a physical space for people to explore the art and science of happiness. We'd heard of the Empathy Museum, and we'd also heard that there's museums for pencil, there's museums for coal. There was one museum which was actually quite popular in London. I think it goes around the world. It's called the Museum of Broken Relationships, and for some reason people found that fascinating. So it's kind of almost the opposite of it, a museum for happiness. But a place not just to tell you, this is what you need to be happy, but actually, and not a place of artifacts. Some people say, oh, a museum of happiness, like how pictures of how people used to be happy, and gradually the smile goes down. And like, no, it's actually a physical place where we can build a sense of community. And, you know, we reflected a lot about our values. So it's building community, sharing kindness, encouraging creativity, and encouraging mindfulness as well. So that's how our initial idea started. And our first event, we just did like a pop-up event where we called it the Science of Happiness, and someone came along and ran that one-day session. And people really loved, first of all, coming together to learn about happiness. And then I just felt this great joy to be part of facilitating something where people can give time to themselves and learn about something about happiness, which is not just something that's been made up, but actually has been researched for a long time, or traditions have talked about. So to be in a place and in a space where people can actually learn about well-being and happiness was fantastic. It was a great feeling for me. It was a great feeling for them. People kept asking for more and more of it. So I can keep sharing the story of that, shall I?
No, and actually it's been like, I would really recommend people checking out the Museum of Happiness, because it's been such an inspiring story to see how it's grown from an initial pop-up event in London that was then massively popular, and there was like almost 1,000 people saying they were going to go, and I remember you being a bit overwhelmed and thinking, how are we going to fit all the people in the venue? And then since then, Shamash and Vicky and the team have crowdfunded, and they've now got a physical space in London, in Camden, where they share the art and the science of happiness in such a playful and accessible way. And they do things like, you know, at the moment you guys have the Winter Happiness Festival to help people during this time of the year. So it's really, like you say, a sense of bringing people together to celebrate the joyful things in life. Thank you for sharing a bit about your story and your inspiration. I'm keen to also ask you some of the questions that people voted on in the Facebook group beforehand, but I'm just seeing the comments. Just to briefly welcome anyone that's maybe joined us a little bit late, and say that we're just in the middle of our Happier Self, Happier World webinar, and yeah, it's really great to hear Shamash's experience setting up the Museum of Happiness, which he's just shared. Joanna said the Museum of Happiness sounds brilliant. I really want to visit. And I see that following my question before, there are quite a few people from Building Wellbeing Together on this call. Chris and Sally, hello. And yeah, it's great to have you with us. So some of the questions that we asked on the Facebook group beforehand, the most popular one that people voted for in the event was, can you share some tips for practicing compassion with yourself and also with others? And I think that really speaks to the theme of this event about kind of, you know, balancing out that self-care with care for others. So I wonder what you would respond.
Yeah, I voted for that question too. Anybody know the answer? How can we be more compassionate to ourselves and others? Yeah, it's a great question. I think it's kind of, if we can learn the art of looking after yourselves and being kind and compassionate to others, for me, it's kind of linked to a sense of a meaningful life, a purposeful life, the secret to life in a way, because of having been involved in the Museum of Happiness and spent a lot of time reflecting and talking to lots of people. What it ultimately always comes down to is kindness and compassion. I was recently reading a beautiful book by the Dalai Lama and Desmond Tutu, Archbishop Desmond Tutu, and the questions keep, you know, he keeps asking questions about joy, and ultimately they keep talking, you know, it's all about compassion. So how can we cultivate a sense of kindness and compassion towards ourselves, first of all? And first of all, to emphasize that is really important. A classic story that people often say is that when you're on a plane and, you know, they give you the rules, like, you know, if the oxygen masks go down, you need to remember to put your oxygen mask on yourself before the person next to you. And the reason they remind us is because of our natural inclination. We're almost wired to be able to want to help others first. And that's such a beautiful thing to know, actually. There's kindness which is wired within us. So it actually takes a little bit of effort and energy, and we need to remind ourselves to be kind to ourselves, first of all, and that's important. And I think it's about turning that natural capacity we have to reach out to others and help others to actually treat ourselves in that way. So an approach, or a kind of a technique, if you call it like that, that works for me is actually to imagine one of my favorite teachers. So for me, it's a teacher called Ajahn Brahm. For you, it could be someone like the Dalai Lama, or it could be your grandma, or your uncle, or your aunt. But actually to visualize someone who represents wisdom and kindness. And it could be absolutely anyone. And so I visualize that person, and I imagine, I may be in a difficult situation, under a lot of stress, suffering in some way, because compassion is about how do we meet a moment of suffering. And then I just imagine talking to that person and asking them for advice, like, what would you do in the situation? I did it this morning. I've had a decision about a certain project that I had to do. And so he said, what would you do? What advice do you have for me? And usually it's like, just relax. Don't think, don't worry about it too much. It's not as important as you think. If you really don't want to do this particular project, then you don't have to do it. So you get this kind of warm advice. It's the kind of advice that you would offer a friend. And so that's an approach that works really well for me. So try that, and that may work. If not, then you could try different. There's beautiful meditations such as the loving kindness meditations, which we might try a little bit later on, that can help to kind of spark or cultivate a sense of compassion towards yourself. Just doing small things to treat yourself. One of the things I found with people who are always like, I think a lot of people that are attracted to the Network of Wellbeing and the Museum of Happiness are people that are really kind, lovely people, and that love to help the world, make the world a better place, are very giving people. And it's hard for us to be kind to ourselves. And when we are kind to ourselves, the feeling that often comes up is guilt. And one kind of technique that's come to my mind, some people may have heard of this book, which is called Feel the Fear and Do It Anyway. I'm not sure if I've actually gone past the actual title, because I think the title is brilliant. Feel the fear and do it anyway. So there's this difficult emotion that comes up, and the idea is to meet that emotion and to overcome it through actually doing the action. So maybe another approach would be to feel the guilt and take a bath anyway. So when we ask ourselves, what would be a kind thing to do right now? How could I treat ourselves to, you may have not taken a break over a weekend or an afternoon or whatever. You may be really, really busy, but that maybe deep in your heart, that's what you need. But there's this feeling of guilt. So I would urge people to maybe allow that feeling of guilt to be there and still do that action. And with time, that guilt may start to melt. Because if you deserve it just as much as anyone else. The Buddha has this beautiful quote where he says that you can search the whole universe and look for someone who's more or less deserving of compassion. There's no one less or more deserving of compassion than yourself. You're equally deserving of this compassion as anyone else. So I like to think when we do cultivate this compassion towards ourselves, when we do suffer, it almost naturally spills out. And so the question about how can we be more compassionate to others, because we've topped ourselves up, because we feel more recharged, with that extra brightness and that energy, we can help others. There's just one other little example I'd like to give. Yeah. So another kind of sister organization that we're both friends with is called Action for Happiness. And they had a fantastic speaker last night called Matthew Ricard that some of the listeners may know. And the question that he was asked by Mark Williamson was that some people think doing meditation, doing mindfulness, all this stuff, going in a cave is considered selfish. Isn't it a selfish act? And Matthew Ricard said, that's a really easy question to answer, because what we're doing is trying to reduce a sense of selfishness. Is it selfish to reduce your selfishness? And then he gave a lovely example of, imagine people building a hospital. So there's lots of patients, lots of people that you need to deal with and treat. But you need to take a year, a 2 year, or 3 years to build a hospital. So you need to do lighting, you need to do the piping, you need to put the beds in, you need to do flooring. You're not actually treating people at that time. But once you've built this hospital, you're in a position to help and support maybe thousands of people. So in the same way, we need to do this little project on ourselves of building, being kind to ourselves, being compassionate to ourselves, and cultivating mindfulness or yoga, or whatever strategies work for you, going for a walk in nature. Different approaches work for different people. But by giving ourselves the time to do that, think of it as like you're building your own kind of in a hospital to be able to help other people and treat other people and be kind to other people. And Mathieu Ricard, he says that it's helped his organization so much that the charity that he's now set up, which is helping hundreds of thousands of people, is he feels because of that inner work that he'd done previously.
Yeah.
So there's some ideas to reflect on.
That's such, thank you. That's such a rich range of ideas. And I think that was really resonating with some people. I see people commenting that they really love that approach that you've shared. So in terms of feeling the fear and doing it anyway, and
feel the guilt and have a bath anyway.
Yeah, exactly. Catherine said that made her laugh out loud, which is lovely.
Feel
Maybe
the guilt and
if
have
you
the
want
chocolate
to
anyway.
share,
The whole book series there, feel the guilt, and we need to be careful.
if you want to share in the comments and just say if anything resonated with you that Shamash has just shared, even if you just want to add a simple yeah, it's just nice to know if things are resonating. For me, from what you said, I really recognize this sense of self-nurturing and actually not always needing to immediately see the results. And one metaphor that came to me recently that I really like is a kind of natural metaphor of the tree and the roots growing in the ground. And you can't always see the blossom. It's not always summertime and it's not always flowers and green, but the roots are there and they're being nourished by the different seasonal changes. So I think it's about knowing that it's okay to nourish yourself even if it's not visible, the outcomes of that nourishment aren't immediately visible to the outside world. That's okay. And like you say, feeling the guilt and doing it anyway is really lovely advice.
Yeah, no, that's really good analogy. Like it's like you planting a seed and you're just watering it and just waiting and waiting. You just don't know.
Yeah, exactly.
That's nice.
So I'm going to move on to our next question, is about what are the benefits of, so we've been talking quite a lot about mindfulness, but maybe it would just be helpful to briefly say some of the benefits of mindfulness for our personal well-being. And maybe you want to also reflect on, I know that you're a big fan of kindfulness, so what are the benefits of both mindfulness and kindfulness for our well-being?
Yeah, I'd love to. Yeah, that's beautiful to put the two together because I'm a real fan of the concept of kindfulness, but some people may be new to the concept of mindfulness too. So most people consider mindfulness as a part of something that's originally been taken from Buddhist philosophies and Buddhist ideas, the sense of cultivating a present moment awareness. And actually, if you look back at the texts of what the Buddha taught about mindfulness, and he emphasized that, but he also kept emphasizing again and again the importance of compassion, the importance of cultivating kindness too. And there's all these values and kind of almost like rules or things that you need to follow to be able to cultivate a life which is full of well-being, not only for yourself, but the people around you. So because mindfulness become a very popular concept and almost people are not going to let it go as such, one nice little way of bringing the values of the kind of approach that was originally shared by the Buddha is to change the letter M to a K. So rather than calling it mindfulness, calling it kindfulness. So the reason for this is let's take the definition of mindfulness as a moment-to-moment non-judgmental awareness or a present moment awareness. So let's say if you've got a sniper, someone who wants to shoot someone, okay, if that person wants to be successful, he needs to go out in the night time, he has to find this person, and he needs to be really in the present moment, and he has to be really focused and really there, not thinking about the past and the future, fully in the present moment. And if he managed to shoot that person, you would say, oh, the beauty of that was it was just so mindful, he was just so present. You wouldn't call that a mindful person or practicing mindfulness. I wouldn't say so anyway, because it doesn't embody the values that originally come from mindfulness. So kindfulness is about that whole element, and for me it means a lot of other things, but just to also think about actually not just being in the present moment, but being in the present moment, using that present moment awareness to cultivate a friendly awareness, to be kind to that person in front of you or kind to yourself if you're on your own. So this is what kindfulness is about. And so the reason why I kind of had a light bulb moment for me myself was about 2 or 3 years ago, when I'd been traveling a lot and I'd been really tired. And it just really doesn't look good when a mindfulness teacher gets burnout. So I was walking around every day and I was just feeling tired. And I tried my usual little meditation or mindfulness strategies whilst being tired, and it wasn't working. So I had this genius idea, which is every time I'm tired, I'm just going to go to bed, which was actually, it felt a bit weird because it was during the day. So I woke up and I felt tired. So I had my breakfast and I went back to bed, and I was lying in bed. I was lucky I was able to do this. And I was on my phone on YouTube because I started to get a bit bored, tired and bored. And so I ended up watching a video on letting go by this teacher I mentioned, Ajahn Brahm. And it recommends other videos after that. And it had an entire retreat on there from day 1 to day 10. And the approach was so compassionate. He said, day 1 of the retreat, this is called a retreat. So it's a treat. So most people are so tired and they're working so hard. So just relax. So, just go back to your rooms, go to your beds and just sleep. And, if you feel you're breathing, great. If not, just let yourself sleep. Think of it more like a meditation rather than a meditation. And so I actually tried this approach, and I actually felt a little bit guilty. Like I was saying earlier, that I felt, I should be working or checking emails or, organizing a webinar with Flow or something, to doing something.
I hope that's not adding to your stress level.
No, this is really fun, actually. Thank you.
Yeah.
So I felt a little bit of guilt. But then naturally, through this practice of not concentrating on my breathing, but letting go and just letting my mind almost drift and come in and out, naturally it started to center and become focused after about a day or two, actually. And then the tiredness started to go away, and I started to treat my mind, this is what the teacher was teaching, treat your mind like your best friend. If your best friend is talking to you, you don't constantly interrupt them and say, thank you very much, but focus on this. You listen to them, you open your heart to them, you really, really listen, you're really present with them. So that's the approach that I use. I opened my heart to whatever my mind wanted to do. I opened my heart to my body. If it was tired, I let it relax and rest. And the guilt went away, and it felt very, very pleasant. And I felt fully recharged. And so in a way, I felt that actually in some ways I was not really practicing mindfulness or kindfulness before. It was more like a concentration practice, trying to control myself. And so I've gradually been learning over the last few years to go from what we call a control freak to a kindfulness freak. So going from trying to control things too much and fix things and telling your mind or my mind what to do, to actually making best friends with my mind. So that's the idea of kindfulness, making friendship with body and mind.
That's really a beautiful explanation. And I think that it really reflects back on what you shared earlier about, because when I hear kindness, I immediately think, yes, how can I be kinder to other people? But to then reflect that back onto how do I treat myself in body and mind is really a beautiful thing. And like you say, that there can be that immediate kind of fear or anxiety that maybe that's selfish or somehow self-centered, but actually once you allow yourself that time and space, it's the kindness, the kindfulness you offer yourself actually ends up naturally kind of spilling out, and you have more energy to help and support others from a more genuine place of care and support, really support for yourself and support for the others. At least that's how I found it in my experience.
No, that's beautifully said. I totally agree. Yeah.
Thanks so much, Shamash. So I'm really aware that we've got some really amazing people kindly joining us to listen to this discussion. So I really would like to move towards opening it out to wider questions and comments. But I wonder whether now is a good time to just do a slightly longer practical exercise, just to kind of reflect on some of the wisdom that Shamash has shared thus far with us, and then maybe reflect, are there questions coming up or things you'd really like to use this opportunity to ask Shamash? And then if there are, then please just put those in the Q&A box and I can go through the Q&A box. If you've got general comments or things you'd like to share, feel free to use the chat. But if you've got a specific question you'd like us to ask and discuss, then put it in the Q&A box. If there are people watching us on Facebook Live that have a question, you can add it in the comments, and my colleague Roger is helping with feeding those questions into our webinar Q&A. So what we'll do now, we'll just hand over to Shamash for just a few minutes, maybe maximum 5 minutes, to do a kindfulness meditation to immediately put into practice what Shamash has been sharing with us there. And yeah, take this opportunity to just take a breath and reflect on any questions or thoughts arising.
Thank you, Flo. Okay, so so this is another opportunity where we can give permission to ourselves to be kind to ourselves. Whether the guilt or other emotions come up, we can still continue to practice, and let's see what happens. So I invite everyone to, again, find a nice, comfortable and cozy posture for this. We're going to do a little kindful body scan. So you're very welcome to, as long as you're not driving or something, you're welcome to lie down, or you could be on a bed or sit back in your chair. And you may not normally do this, so you might want to experiment with taking a different approach to your practice and see what happens. And if you've never done things like meditation or mindfulness before, again, maybe have a go just for 5 minutes. So earlier we took a few nice deep in and out breaths just to help to engage the relaxation response, to soothe ourselves. And so you might like to do that too. Breathing in nice and gently. Breathing out fully. And as you breathe out, you may just notice your body relaxing a little bit. The out breath always slightly reduces your heart rate, and it always engages a little bit of relaxation in the body. It's something that's part of the way human beings and mammals work. So nice, deep, smooth breaths in and slow, smooth breaths out. And so now when you're ready to do so, just checking with your body as a whole and just adjust your body as necessary so that in a posture that feels right for you. And although you may have done this earlier, as you practice, as time goes by, your natural levels of mindfulness go up and you're able to notice more. So begin by setting the intention to cultivate mindfulness and kindness towards yourself. Knowing that the kinder you are towards yourself, the more you can deeply rest and recharge, and so the better able you are to serve those around you, those that you love. So when you're ready to do so, just moving your attention down to your feet and your toes, maybe wiggling your toes if you can't feel any sensations there. And the mindfulness gives you feedback. So you notice how your feet are feeling. And you create a connection between yourself and your feet. And yes, your mind will go off into all sorts of thoughts. So let's not be control freaks to our minds, but just let it be, and it will naturally come back when it's ready to do so. So feeling the sensations in your feet, and then as best you can today, sending some kindness, some care, a sense of affection to your feet. Thank you, feet, for all you do to help me walk around, to move around. Maybe you play sports, maybe you just gently walk from time to time. Acknowledging and being kind to your feet. Some of you may be quite visual. You can imagine a certain colored light, a white light, or a golden light. Whatever works for you. Everyone's different. But the light that represents kindness and care. And then when you're ready to do so, moving your attention up to your legs, the upper and lower parts of your legs, the sensations of tension or relaxation in the muscles. And that's the job of mindfulness, to give you feedback so you notice how your legs feel. Most of the time our attention's in our minds and things to do. But for the next few minutes, we're just experimenting with coming back to our bodies, which is very much part of us too. And then again, sending kindness, compassion. It's the kindness that heals, that relaxes. And it takes a bit of practice, but with time, you're able to cultivate a friendly awareness. That same feeling you get when you're maybe holding a young child or looking at a beautiful flower or a butterfly or a sunset, that sense of warmth. Bringing that attention to your legs and noticing what happens. As you do this practice to help you cultivate the kindness, you can just gently smile from time to time. And the physical smile can help to evoke the emotion of well-being and kindness too. As you move your attention to your back, your torso, your belly, your chest, being mindful of all the organs that are functioning for your own health and well-being, giving it some gentle attention and the awareness feeding back to your being, letting you know how it feels, knowing at any time you can move and adjust your posture. And now sending kindness, sending care, compassion to your body. Thank you for working so hard for me. Heart's been beating away for so many years. Your lungs have been breathing every moment since you've been born. So thank you. Sending some kindness to that, some gratitude. And then moving up to your shoulders, maybe massaging your shoulders or rolling your shoulders if you like. And down your arms and hands. Noticing how your arms and hands feel. Noticing and acknowledging if your mind goes off to other thoughts. And letting it be. It will come back by itself. In fact, the more kindness and compassion you can cultivate, the more you enjoy feeling your body, and the more your mind wants to be in the here and now, because it's so pleasant. The present moment becomes a pleasant moment to be in. So then when you're ready to do so, moving your awareness and mindfulness in the back of your neck and throat and your face, just easing off any frowning in your forehead perhaps, or any clenching of your jaw. You can experiment with smiling or frowning or having a neutral face. And if you do that slowly, you can notice what effect it has on your emotional state, the expression on your face. It's a direct reflection quite often. And then around the sides of your face, the back of your head. And then last but not least, your brain that's been working so hard for you for so long. And you've perhaps been taught to control it or to tell it what to do. But let's practice for a few moments to make peace with your mind and to just let your brain, your mind, do whatever it wants to do. See if you feel like experimenting with doing that. Just letting it be, and if it wants to think, then just let it think. If it wants to be nice and calm, then let it do that. But being a friend to your brain, to your mind, making peace, being kind, being gentle. And if you happen to be listening to a recording of this, you could maybe stop and continue to practice that. And if not, when you're ready to do so, you can just notice how your body and mind feels now, and just notice this is the effect of 5 minutes or so of kindfulness practice. And coming back to the room. I think I got a little bit carried away there.
Thank you so much. So it's that was really beautiful, and I really enjoyed it, and definitely delved deeply into kindfulness. So I hope that others on the call, on the webinar, have appreciated that as well. And I really love what you say, the present moment becoming the pleasant moment.
Yeah.
So we are going to have the next 10 minutes or so, 10 or 15 minutes before we finish. We want to hand over to you guys if you've got any questions that you would like to ask Shamash. I think there's already a few in the chat box. So I'm going to go through those, and if sorry, not the chat box, the Q&A box. So if you have any specific questions, please put them in the Q&A box, and we'll address them from there. So I'm just going to start off with, and maybe Shamash, just to say, because we want to get through a few questions, maybe just give a relatively brief answer.
Sure.
How do you balance the need to stay informed about the world when so much of what we see in the media is, and then Josh has cut off his question there, but I think we know where he's going.
Yeah.
When there are stressful events occurring in the world, how do you balance out your personal practice with the need for kind of social action?
Yeah. So my personal approach is not to spend too much time on media. My philosophy is that most of the media is designed to maximize the amount of income based on advertising. And so they design the media to grab your attention as much as possible. So there's millions of kind acts happening, as well as lots of negative things happening in the world. But they find that if they show negative things, then it grabs your attention. You know, oh my God, there's going to be a nuclear war. Oh my God, there's going to be, what's Trump doing next? And so they'll continue to feed this again and again because it helps them to sell more of their media. So I actually, just like we need to be careful about what we eat and what we watch. So in the same way, media it's almost like a diet, and so we need to select what's right for us. So I think that's really important. Each person's different. Some people may be able to watch it a lot, others less. Also, another thing to be aware of, I'm not sure exactly how true it is, but they say that the amount of violence in the world is actually going down rather than up. There's some research on that showing, whereas we would have used something like, the death penalty, even in somewhere like England, and done a lot of public negative acts, whereas nowadays that would be seen frowned upon. And so there's lots of examples and evidence of violence going down, but the amount of media that we have showing it is going up. So balancing that is important, I think.
Yeah, I think, and as with probably many of these questions, there's we could have a whole hour-long discussion on this topic alone, but I think it's a really good question. And I think what you say about kind of mindful consumption of I think it's really important to stay informed, especially about the topics that you feel passionately about. But there's a lot of different news sources. Of course, there's the newspaper Positive News, and there's lots of, there's a wealth of media sources out there. So being conscious about how you consume the media. And also, one thing that helps me is trying to sometimes consume media in a kind of action-focused way, as in, is there something, even a small thing, that I could do about this particular issue? And even if that small thing is just looking at connecting with and supporting other people that are already taking action on that. So I think there are techniques that you can use in that way.
Best technique is when you get a newspaper is go to the comic section. That's a good one.
Just start with the comics and you'll be fine. Safi Price has asked, have you seen the work of Joe Berry in her TED talk on compassion? It's very inspirational. Okay, well, that's a great tip. Thank you, Safi.
We'll check that out.
That's a really good tip to share. Mary Morris has asked, Shamash, you seem to embody happiness. Is that true? Are you really happy?
This is all fake.
Great question, Mary. Actually, it's funny because when I first met you, I've known Shamash now for a few years. I was almost like, wow, he's so... I had the same question as you, Mary. I was like, is it true? Is he really that happy? And now, after being friends with him for some years, I can say, yeah.
But to be honest, I'm particularly happy around other people. So being with other people makes me extra happy. I'm not usually laughing so much on my own in my room. So being with other people really lifts my mood and happiness, especially.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and also I think that there's a sense that as well, you know, when you get to since I've got to know you, of course, everyone has both happy and less happy
Mm,
moments, and
exactly.
that's I think that's a really important point to acknowledge.
Mm,
Generally, in happiness and well-being, it's not practicing mindfulness for me. In my experience, hasn't always been about being happy all the time, but it's about kind of that self-acceptance, self-compassion, and then, like
mm,
we've talked about, that spilling out into compassion for others. That doesn't
mm.
always look like a massive smile or a laugh. Often it does when Shamash is around, but but,
Yeah.
but it's that a lot of different emotions are welcome, and I think that's an important point as
Yeah,
well.
no, I totally agree. Yeah, I mean, I'm obviously a big fan of the whole kind of playful approach, and we take that with
Mm-hmm.
the museum and with my friends and stuff. But yeah, what I'm really interested in is about cultivating a sense of contentment, so that
Mm-hmm.
happiness that comes from peace. So yeah, that's a really good point, Flo.
Right. And yeah, I've got another question from Joanna, but just to say, if anyone else has any last questions, please put them in the Q&A box now, or if Roger monitoring the Facebook Live, if there's any, then please put them in, because we're in the coming 5 to 10 minutes drawing to a close. But Joanna has shared that her question is, what would you say mindfulness can offer someone who is already feeling pretty happy and content in life? And Joanna's shared a little bit about her background. She writes a blog called Smile Being You, and she's shared a bit that she's followed your work, your Mindfulness for Dummies book,
Mm.
etc. You can probably see her full question in the Q&A.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I'll have a look. But
Um, but
so her questions is like, she's feeling happy and content. So
yeah,
what can mindfulness offer? Well, first of all, mindfulness is about present moment awareness. So we can't say that, oh, I'm aware enough. There's not like, we've reached the limit of awareness and presence. We can always cultivate more sense of presence and awareness, no matter how kind of content or happy that we are. And
mm-hmm,
the other thing is that I think it's fantastic if you can cultivate our own sense of well-being and contentment. That's fantastic. And then the network of well-being and what we do is also about the opportunity. Oh, this is great because there's so many people suffering so much in the world. This is a great opportunity to help more people, to serve more people, to meet their suffering with compassion through not just the mindfulness but the kindfulness and the compassion. And so if we're in that fortunate position of feeling content, that's fantastic, and encourage you to continue to do that, and also to use that energy and that wisdom that you have, which is so beautiful, to share that with as many people as possible.
mm-hmm.
And it's an ongoing practice of cultivating that wisdom. It's not a fixed place that we get to.
Yeah, that's really helpful. And yeah, thanks, Joanna, for the question, and I hope that helps. And sorry I couldn't read out the whole of your question due to time, but it's really great that you've joined us, and I think it's a really good point and question. Asha, it's really lovely that Asha has joined us. Asha actually works with Action for Happiness in the Netherlands. She started Action for Happiness in the Netherlands, so I know Asha well, and I'm really happy to see you here, Asha. She's asking, did you read the book Soul for Happy by Mo Gawdat? If so, what did you think of his happiness equation? So I don't know if you've seen this guy, Mo Gawdat.
Yeah,
He did an interview, I think it was either on Channel 4 or BBC, that went quite viral.
yeah.
And yeah, he's a really inspiring guy. So
Yeah, I don't think I read the whole book, but I saw the interview, and I'm just trying to remember because I was fascinated by this happiness equation, but I've forgotten the exact answer to happiness. But I think it's something along the lines of when our expectations meet reality, and actually, I think that's beautiful because people say, look, this is where I am now, and this is where I want to get to, and if I can just somehow get here, then I'll be happy. And what he's saying is that actually, rather than trying to get to the goal, bring the goal back to actually where we are right now. So where you are now and your expectations, let them be one. Then you can just go on that and be happy. This is my equation. But
yeah.
so yes, I think I do want to emphasize the importance of the power of low expectations. People are talking about high expectations all the time, and I was trained in this when I was a school teacher. You know, students, they never get to that. You know, you keep telling them higher and higher expectations, but then you never get to the sense of contentment. So
Yeah.
let's you can experiment with having low expectations, and if you're very advanced, no expectations at all. Then then the contentment's right there, and then you have the energy to do all sorts of things.
It's yeah. Just to say, Asha's kind of clarified the happiness equation is your happiness is equal to or greater than the difference between the events of your life and your expectations of how life should behave. So yeah, it's very much about kind of this understanding of expectations, I think. And actually I think Mo Gaudat is a really interesting guy. He's got I would it's an interesting theory to check out further, and again we could talk about it in more detail, but it would be great to share more, Asha, about Mo Gaudat's work, and if you've got any we can share like links to his talks and that kind of thing.
Yeah, and his book and stuff is supposed to be really good. Yeah. Although
and,
we don't have any high expectations about it, of course.
No. But I think this kind of tension between expectations and achievement is quite interesting. And actually, I went to an event that Asha organized with Mo Gaudat in Amsterdam, and he was saying not having expectations doesn't, people think, well, then you're not going to do anything with your life, and you're not going to make an impact or do any kind of social good. But actually it's a kind of balancing act. It's like and what you said just now, this sense of through taking it more gentle on yourself and lowering expectations, actually kind of a stronger outpouring of kind of purpose and intention can result. And I'm not sure if that's exactly what Mo Gaudat would say, but I think what you added there was very helpful. So I hope, Asha, that was a helpful response for you. And Joanna Bush says, thanks very much for the answer, Shamash, that you gave previously about mindfulness when you're content, and she's going to try and convince others to give mindfulness a try. So brilliant. Thank you guys so much for all of your lovely questions. We're going to kind of slowly draw to a close, but just to let you know, this is going to be a monthly series of webinars from the Network of Wellbeing, and actually next month we're going to be exploring positive psychology and how it connects to a sense of purpose with another amazing speaker, Michelle Preston. So that's going to be on the 27th of February, again at 6 p.m. and again via Zoom. I can share the link in the chat on Zoom, and I'll share it in the Facebook afterwards. And also we'd love to hear what you've thought or your experiences of the webinar. So we'll send around a quick link to a survey if you can share your views, or if you want to share any quick comments now, that's also really helpful. Anything that you've taken away from this webinar, from the experience, we'd really love to hear it if you want to share in the comments, just to kind of help us draw to a close. Asha says, I love the no expectations part of Mo Gaudat's book. Mary Morris says, thank you, Shamash. And Chris Johnson says, thank you, I'm taking away the world of kindfulness. Oh, that's lovely. Thanks so much for joining us, Chris.
Maybe he'll make a song about it.
Yeah, exactly. When we were at Building when we were at Building Wellbeing Together weekend last year, Chris Johnson sung some amazing songs about happiness. Peter says, thank you so much, has really enjoyed it. He's got to run. And Asha says, thank you so much. And Roxanne says, can you watch this later? Yes, you can. So I'm gonna stop the live stream and the recording now, and we will make that available to you at a later date through the email and on the Facebook page. So please do like Network of Wellbeing on Facebook, and also the Museum of Happiness, of course, but we'll share the recordings and etc. of this webinar. Is there anything else you wanted to mention, Shamash, in closing?
I suppose I'll just invite, some people were asking about how to get to the Museum of Happiness, so maybe we can share some of the links, like museumhappiness.org and the conference thing that we're organizing. Will we share it by email later? Is that the best way?
Yeah, well, so we'll share the links by email and also on our Facebook page, Network of Wellbeing now. So keep an eye out for the links to the Museum of Happiness